everybody. We're here with Eric Johnson. Hi, Eric. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Yourself?
Oh, I'm doing well.
Yeah.
You just came from your talk.
I did.
Yes. How was that?
I feel like it went well. Yeah. I had to move quick. It was good. Yeah, enjoyed it.
Tell us a little bit about what you were talking about up there.
So I was talking about serverless and GenAI, and really the idea of how do you go from an idea to production, and how do you think about things in the technical world. There's a lot of things you have to think about. In the GenAI, which also falls in technical, but kind of think about it specifically or granularly, there's some concepts you have to kind of be planning for. You know, from technical, you talk about scaling and cost and reliability and feasibility and scalability and all the abilities, right? But from the GenAI, it's the how fast can I change, and I can go on and on. But basically, we're talking about how do you make decisions that allow you to continue to go forward and be fast and agile.
Mm-hmm. So for the benefit of the non-techies in the audience, Can you explain what serverless means?
Sure. Yeah, so the serverless name is probably a little of a misnomer, to be honest, but the idea is we have several principles that we kind of put in there. The first is you don't patch or manage. There are servers, that's the secret, don't broadcast that, but there are servers, but we manage them, right? So we're gonna make sure they have the latest security patches on them. We're gonna make sure they're updated, that there's enough RAM, there's all the things that normally you find yourself doing that kind of take place of what you should be doing and do your code, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is it's a on-demand kind of pattern. So you only pay for what you use. So for example, a Lambda function, which is probably the most popular or well-known serverless service. For a Lambda function, you say, okay, I have this chunk of code that I want you to run anytime this happens. And that can be an API call, it can be an IoT switch or button, it can be a database change, whatever. What happens is that Lambda comes up, it runs your code, and then it goes away. And the only thing you pay for is the time that it's up. So if you have a workload that sometimes is hitting and sometimes not, in the past we would always have to make sure we have enough compute power for your highest level of load, right? And so even if your load was this, under that, you paid for this. With Lambda, it tracks along with your load. And so that's the other thing. The other thing is we handle things like scalability and we'll do the multi-zone, so you don't have to worry about redundant electricity, redundant power, things like that. And I know power and electricity are the same. That was redundant in itself. A little joke there that I accidentally did. So, so we handle a lot of that, and I can keep going. But the idea is we take a lot of what we call the undifferentiated heavy lifting out of that, so you can just worry about the code that makes a difference.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
And I love that everyone here in this conference seems to be wanting to simplify everybody's life, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Simple, better.
Yeah.
So you talked about serverless and GenAI, and I'm assuming that these go together. And can you tell me why they're such a powerful matchup?
Yeah, so when you think about GenAI is obviously the big thing right now. It's the buzzword. It's the, everything's going on. But in reality, and I'm not downplaying GenAI, so but it's just another workload. So if you think about that, it needs data to come in, it needs data to go out. We're training models, we're getting responses, we're running agents and all those kinds of things. So you need something for that to run on. But because GenAI changes so fast, I made the joke that in the first 3 minutes of my presentation, 17 things changed in GenAI. But that's the truth, right? In that, right now MCP servers are the big deal, but something else could come up. RAG was big for a while. We've moved from agents to tools, and now we're kind of going, And so when you build, you have to build in a way that what we call two-way doors. Can I back out of that and do it another way? You have to be flexible and agile. And serverless is specifically, that's one of the core tenets of serverless is, I'm only using what I pay for, and so if I have a Lambda function that's doing something, I can quickly change that, and the next time it invokes, it's going to have those changes. Or I can add another service or pull it out. So it's all about flexibility. And when I'm running things like EC2 instances, I'm having to deploy new code, or I have to buy new servers, or there's all kinds of things, and you just can't move as agile or fast. So that's why I think it's a good fit. And the whole idea with just another workload, you only pay for what you use. We have customers that run in our free tier. And when I say free tier, you get 1 million invokes a month for free, you get 400,000 gigabytes of memory, and I won't list it all, but the idea is there's a certain amount you get free, and customers are running in that or barely in that, so they're saving a lot of money, and then they're only paying for what they use. So it's a very, very efficient and cost-effective way to run.
That makes total sense, and I'm convinced it does sound like a great
Let's do it. Let's build something.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
So on your talk description, it said that you were going to use a real-world example to kind of show what that means.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know because I'm not allowed to watch the talks. I'm stuck here doing interviews.
Yeah.
And it's my honor. But I'm really curious, what was the real life example that you made?
So I have a good friend of mine who runs it's a disaster recovery group, volunteer group. You don't get paid for it. And it's out of our church back in Colorado, or out of our denomination. And what he does is he has all this institutional knowledge. For example, if a fire or a flood or a hurricane or earthquake, something happened, he can look at that and go, okay, I know that 100,000 people were affected. That means, based on what it is, let's say it's a fire, that means we're going to need X amount of what we call ash out crews. And these are people that are trained to pull ash out and clean up areas. We need X amount of food trucks. We know that that'll feed that many. Laundry and so many other services. And a lot of that is institutional as far as he knows in his head, to the point where places like the Salvation Army, Red Cross, FEMA, they call him. When something happens, he is called in to help with logistics. But a lot of what he has is I don't want to downplay, it's just data. And so we can take and build an agent that said, okay, you give me, if I have 1,000 people affected, how many food trucks do I need? So I figure out the 1 to many ratio, right? And then I can use things like census.gov, which has all the census data. So I can say, now you just have to give me cross streets, and I'll tell you how many people live there. And then I can use Open FEMA to say, what's happened before? Is this a normal flood place? That kind of thing, and so on. So I can take all this data, and I can use things like RAG and MCP servers and all the GenAI buzzwords that we use, right? I can use all those to build this agent where now, God forbid, if something happens to him and he gets hit by a bus, we still have this, and we could type into ours, there's a fire between these cross streets, or even just say there's a fire in Fort Worth, what do I do? And the agent can go, okay, well tell me the cross streets, or tell me the city, and maybe tell me, and it can look it can look up weather data. And so that's what I've been building, and I have most of it built out. I have a working example. It's not great yet. I didn't show it today because I wasn't sure where the internet would be, but that's the example.
Okay.
So, and I plan on handing it back to him when I'm all done.
I love that.
Isn't that cool?
Yeah. That's a real example. We can see it in action. We can see all the benefits.
That's right.
But now I'm curious.
Okay.
Are there any limitations to going serverless?
There's the big debate on, are they replacing us, the GenAI and things like that, and we're not going to go too down that. I think you still need the human in the loop, and so maybe it's a good limitation, but what I've found, we talk about the terms, let me just throw all the buzzwords in, we do vibe coding and stuff like that, and those are a great way to go, but I found, and it could be any of the different agents. They're really good, but they're not perfect yet. And so I guess the limitation is, or the guardrails is, humans in the loop for validation. Is that giving me back the right stuff? Now, we'll probably get to the point where we can use, and we already are, we're using models to validate models that are validating models, right? But I think the limitation is, it's still based on data, and data can be flawed. So that might be more philosophical than anything, but always check your responses.
Yes,
so.
no, I appreciate a good philosophical standpoint, especially when it comes to AI.
There's
so much to consider still.
Yeah. There's, like any good tech, the answer to the question is always, well, it depends.
It depends.
It depends, yeah. So that's a solid technical answer.
Are there any tools and resources that you would recommend if somebody is thinking about doing that jump to serverless?
Yeah, I think, so I'm a big, there's a couple things, and I'll chase those a little bit, but like, I'm a big, what we call infrastructure as code guy. So a lot of times when we build applications, if we go into the AWS console, and I'm going to talk AWS because that's what I know,
Yeah.
and I can click and point and drag and stuff like that, but that's not repeatable. So I'd encourage people to learn something like AWS SAM, which is specifically designed to build serverless. And we have some drag and drop type ideas, drag that in, and it does the permissions and stuff like that. I encourage folks to look at the AI assistants. We have one at Amazon that's very good it's called Q. And it comes in several different flavors, but there's one called QCLI that I can run right in my IDE, and I can also do a plugin for it in VS Code. And it's really helpful because I could say, and I've done this, at 3 in the morning, it's like I keep getting the same error, I don't know what it means, I don't even know what the error means. And I can tell Q, this is the error I'm getting, help me solve that, and it can start figuring that out. So while I say, don't trust blindly in the AI tools, use the tools. And QCLI is really cool because it's free with now this may change in recording time, but it's when you have a builder ID, you can download and use QCLI for right now. So it's worth checking out.
I'm definitely going to check those out. I'm quite curious.
It's definitely worth checking out.
Which leads to my next question is serverless just for tech startups and tech companies right now, or is there a use case for others?
Now, if you serverless is from. I tend to talk about startups because kind of where my passion is and my heart is. And yeah, it's a perfect place for, if I'm doing a startup, I'm gonna run in serverless because like I said, I can run in free tier, I can move fast, development doesn't usually cost me anything. But enterprises are using this as well documented. You can look on our website, things like Capital One, they're huge in serverless. Netflix, as Fortinet talked about, and I could say they use serverless. We can talk about all kinds of different things. And what's really cool, and I'll give this as a quick example, is companies look at it, we have this process, and here's one I can actually talk about. I did some work for NFL last year, and they have a process where they were manipulating images. They take pictures of all the football players, right? So you got 3,000 images sitting in an S3 bucket, which is a AWS storage. And they say, okay, we need to modify, we got to cut out the backgrounds, we need to crop them, we need to maybe change the jersey, stuff like that. So they were having an external, shop do it, and it was taking 2 or 3 months. It was costing them in the neighborhood of $60,000, and they needed to go faster. The money wasn't even as much the issue as the speed. And so we were able to actually use serverless step functions, to be exact, and we wrote a process that we say, okay, there's 3,000, or actually just say all the images in that bucket, I want you to do these 10 things. And what it would do, we actually called Adobe endpoints to do the crop, and all the stuff that they were doing by hand, we were able to do automated. And then do some other stuff and then drop it back in. So we reduced it from 3 months to about 45 seconds. And getting the same kind of work. They may have had to trim a couple things, but we could show them demos, and it reduced it by about $57,000. So,
what?
So large corporates will use it, and I could name a bunch of others that use it, but no, serverless there's a term called serverless first. And so what happens, we have a lot of companies that are coming in. Liberty Mutual is another great example, where they come in and they say, anything we build starts in serverless. And if for some reason the match isn't good, then we'll go to something else. But because of the flexibility and all the things we do for that, and the scalability and reliability, they're going to start there. So is it just for startups? Absolutely not. It has an application all across the game.
Okay.
So that's a fun story. I
love that story.
Yeah.
And you're a creative guy, it seems, from this brief conversation that we've had. I want to know, can you think of a use case for GenAI that people aren't using yet, they haven't thought of yet?
Oh gosh, no, because I'm going to take that, I don't want to give that away. So, that, I don't know if I'm on the spot I can think of, but it's funny because I'm not kidding you. The other day I was like, oh, what if we did this? But there's a lot of things we do. So the most common thing we think of, and we were actually just talking about in our workshop, like 70% of most Gen AI are chats, right? They're some kind of, here's the data, now do something with the data. But I think there's some things that we can do that are more of observability. And I don't mean data so much as how am I sitting? Am I sitting properly? You know, and is there ergonomically, and just by evaluating that, could we do something? That's a real simple one. But there are other things. How am I? I'm a drummer. That's a fun story too. But am I holding the sticks right? Which for me would be no. But you know, I hold it differently than everybody. But am I holding? I think there's a lot of things we can do that it's letting the model look at things and going, okay, based on all my training data, that's not right. And a lot of it is, again, this observability on. There was a company that was doing work on like trucks coming out of a warehouse. They were able to know by how low the truck was sitting if there was stuff coming out that shouldn't be coming out. So there's a lot of application for it. And it's just, again, that model, taking a picture, knowing all the data behind it. So there you go. I don't think I answered your question, but I think I ran around it properly.
Honestly, yeah. I'll take it. I'll take that as an answer because I'm now thinking of all these different use cases.
Yeah. You know, one I did think of, I have a buddy that his job was to know how things reacted when you dropped it. How fun is that? You know, drop, okay, how did that react?
Take
data,
fun.
stuff like that. So much so that he got hired by a very large company, and so that he was able to save them money rather because he had drop test laptops, things like that.
Yeah.
Rather than them having to drop, okay, try that, oh that broke, okay, try that. Because he knew the property of the metals and the different things like that, and he had that all in a database, he was able to figure out if you drop it from a certain amount of height, it'll be okay. But I think these are what models, you know, by knowing tensile strength, by knowing all the data that we know, it can correlate a lot of responses that are more than just chats, right? So I think we're just scratching the surface.
I feel like we're just at the tip of the iceberg right now, and there's just so much under the surface.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if you saw it on LinkedIn, there was robot boxing. They just like the movie. I don't remember the movie, but no, I can't think of it. But yeah, it's the robot boxing league. It's not a league yet, but it was in China. They were doing robot boxing.
You're gonna have to send me that link.
I'll find it.
I need to see it.
Great. Yeah.
Okay. Like to wrap things up, I want to ask you, what's the key takeaway from your talk today, from this interview, that you want to share with the audience?
I would say. Don't, and maybe this sounds like a pitch, but try serverless. And the reason for that is, if you have a great idea, don't let all the operational weight that comes with that bog you down. We see so many people trying to build something and they end up steering left or right and they're not able to hold the course. I think serverless really allows you to do that in the fact that when I write code, it's the code that matters, and I'm not worrying about the other stuff. So I'd say try that out. And the other cool thing is, you know, people ask me all the time, how do I get started? It's like, just do it. Just build something. Because we offer the free tier, just build something. Break it. You break it enough times. You know, here's the truth. Most developers, I'm going to say me, when I develop, I try. It's a fail, works. Now, sometimes I don't know why it works, but it works. You know what I mean? So just get in there and try it. You know. So, and serverless is a great place to do that.
I love that. I love it, and thank you for this talk. Let's
course.
leave it out on this hopeful note. Just try. It's okay if you fail.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us.
You bet. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Enjoy the rest of Cloud Summit, and I'll see you around.
I will.
Catch you out
Great
there.
to meet you. So.
Nice to meet you too.
Thank you.